Fuzzy dice, check. Whacker-con bobblehead doll, check. Diesel incense, check.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another fantastic Tuesday here on the Exploding Dice channel. My name is Askren, and I am your host and dungeon master for the evening. And that is really loud. Oh, that's because I was lowering the wrong one. I was lowering the volume to the wrong music. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Fuzzy Dice, the Dungeon Master Show. I need to make sure I mute all this stuff. I need to make sure I muted all that. But we are live a little bit late. Sorry for that, everyone. But, of course, you know, technical difficulties and all that. But we are here, and we have a fantastic show ready for you. I am hanging out, of course, right over here with Miss David from the Crit Juice Show. How's it going, my friend?
This is great.
And so they caught half of that because there are so many audio channels, but we got it now.
All right, well, let me reiterate that it is awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be
looking for the words, yes.
It'll be awesome.
He by the way, he tweeted out that all of your questions will be answered, and he will come to regret that statement very, very soon. But no, thank you, everyone. Thank you, of course, Shadzar, for the bits, man, and of course all of those hosts going on. Thank you, everyone. So as we get, before we kind of dive into the meat of our show, as always, we're going to give just a couple of announcements, get some things sorted out, do some business. First and foremost is that if you guys are just joining us, or if you've been kind of under a rock here for a while, you may have noticed that we passed the 2,000 followers on the Twitch mark not too long ago, and what that means is that we are doing something big for you guys. We're going to be coming in an unspecified date at the end of June. There is going to be, I can confirm there is going to be a marathon charity stream. There's going to be DMs, and there's going to be players, and there's going to be lots of games going on, and we're all going to be raising some good money for some good causes. A lot of people have been getting on the charity train, of course, recently, and we love, you know, we just love doing our charity streams and marathons. So just as a thank you guys to that, I'm going to be bringing all my friends in, all the ones who can make it at least, and we're going to be putting on, hopefully, a great show. So I want to see you all there. Keep your eyes on Twitter for more details. The other major announcement is that May is wrapping up, and that means that our monthly giveaway is coming almost to a close. I actually extended the deadline by a couple days just to account for a shipping thing, but as Dice Thulu will drop you the link, if you have not already, remember that our May giveaway, it started out as just one box of Dwarven Forge dungeon tiles, and then somehow through the magic that is Reaper miniatures, it grew to a box of Dwarven Forge dungeon tiles and like $100 in Reaper miniatures, and then it grew even more when Dwarven Forge said, you know what? That's not enough, and they decided to kick in their own box of dungeon tiles. So if you hit that link, we've separated it out into 3 prizes. First prize, you get a box of painted Dwarven Forge dungeon tiles and a whole box of Reaper miniatures. I actually just tweeted out the picture of them not too long ago. The second prize, of course, you get a full set of unpainted Dwarven Forge dungeon tiles, and the third prize, you get some cool Wizards of the Coast cloth map from Tomb of Horrors. You get one of these here, Elderwood Academy Exploding Dice Chests, which if you have not seen these, just look how cool that is, man. Just look how cool that is. You get that's gonna be yours, and of course some other goodies, maybe a Dice Thulu shirt, maybe some stickers in there. And if you have not already, if you're already following on Twitch and Twitter, then you are already entered. So go claim those entries, man. We, of course, crushed our donation goal for the month, which means we did a giveaway last Saturday. But if you guys want to, every other donation that comes in after that goal is, of course, going to the TwitchCon fund, getting yours truly out to TwitchCon. And hanging out with all those cool people there and bringing you cool content from it. I think that's all of the announcements that I have right now. We will, of course, if any come up, I will drop them at the end of the show. So, enough. That's enough from me. Why don't we introduce our guest, Mr. David? How are you doing today? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? And how did you get here?
Oh, yeah. So I'm David Crennen. I am, gosh, what am I? I'm a DM, or I try to be, for two different streams that I do right now. Originally podcasts. The first one is Crit Juice, which we started a number of years ago out here in Hollywood, California, with a handful of awesome improvisers, and then that kind of spun off into a Star Wars one that I'm doing as well right now called Never Tell Me the Odds. Those are both on the Twitch stream that, or the Twitch channel that I'm part of, Saving Throw Show, or Saving Throw. But they're on Twitch as Saving Throw Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so originally, well, see, I've been living out here in California now for, my goodness, 7 or 8 years. But before that, I'm from Colorado. Denver, Colorado, where I grew up in, I don't know, just nice little beautiful town, just kind of daydreaming about dragons and wizards and magic and all that stuff, and started DMing my brothers and close friends of the family at a young age, and just never stopped. Basically. And now I just do it more so, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I have to mention, because when I started streaming on Twitch a little over a year ago. It was a year back in February, I think. And one of the very first shows that I encountered was Crit Juice, and it was like, I don't even remember why or how. It's just something that kind of came across my feed, and it was like,
That's awesome.
It was definitely one of the early inspirations I had when streaming, because it was like, that was actually ironically before I had found Critical Role, and it was like, I don't know, it's just I'd never really watched a lot of D&D streams, but I listened to a few people who would record stuff, and I used them as sort of inspirations for how to DM. But I don't know, it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it way back when. And it was sad that it kind of disappeared from my feed as I was like, the talk show was taking off, because I remember you guys were also one of the very first people I asked to be on the show, and you were like, yeah, let's do it. And it's like a year of silence, and I'm like, aw, did I scare him away?
Sorry to hear that. Yeah. No, I didn't know about that. Yeah, we had kind of a, let's see here. Well, you said you started about a year ago, so yeah, we have a bit of a hiatus. A lot of the guys who were in Crit Juice were or are also successful improvisers out here in Hollywood, and one of our guys was married and had his first kid, and another one of our guys got married, and someone else, a couple other guys, their careers just started getting a little bigger, and it just became hard to get. The hardest part about whether you're streaming or not, about playing D&D, is getting together with the group of people, and as you become an adult, it's just a little harder. So we kind of fell into this hiatus period where it was just too hard to get a regular game going on.
Yeah.
But excitingly, everyone just communally has felt like it has always been this kind of thought that we're just gonna get back together as soon as we can figure out our schedules or whatever. And this Thursday, actually, in 2 days, we'll be playing, I think it's our 4th game since we came back from our hiatus. We've been playing a regular monthly game on the Saving Throw channel now. It's kind of our new home. We were just independently doing it before, just doing podcast only. And then I started doing Saving Throw for my Star Wars thing. And then kind of got in touch with the guys and was like, hey, guys, let's just do it on Saving Throw, man. Let's just screw being independent. This awesome people over here, it takes off the burden of having to do all the engineering side of it as well, getting the camera set up, getting the mics tested, all these things that are hard to do while you're just trying to play a game.
Mm-hmm.
So we joined up with them, and hopefully you guys can hear incessant honking.
Is there a clown outside your window? What is going on?
I think it's a car of clowns, yeah, is going by. Yep. Let me just check. I'll check really quick that that's a clown car.
I can't, guys. I can't do it. It's just a fucking clown horn. Oh man.
Actually, give me one moment.
So, while he's doing that, remember, if you guys are just joining us, by the way, we do things a little, we have a little bit of a structure here. First of all, what's generally going to happen is for the first half of the show, we're just gonna be hanging out and talking and, finding out what we're into and, going on tangents and discussing cool topics and Dungeon Master stuff. And then, of course, we want you to save your topics and your questions and all that stuff for the second half of the show, where we will answer all of them, and I mean all of them.
As promised. Well, maybe all of them.
I always tell people, I say, like, even the weirdly personal ones, but no one really goes there. Is this better or worse than Jay's fire alarm? His fire alarm, I don't think ruined the show. I think it just made him have to leave. But fucking clown horn. That's I'd kill.
Well, too. I mean, you know what they say, like, if you want to become rich and famous and successful, just try and be a DM for a living. Like, that's obviously
that's why I did it. Yeah.
So that's why I live in East Hollywood, which is a beautiful part of town, very colorful neighborhood. But yeah, that's just a little slice of like life from East Hollywood. You just get I think that was someone going by selling probably just produce, going down the road, just honking the horn, letting people know.
I was gonna say, like, East LA, are you like right next to the clown school? Like, is that, because there's got to be one, right?
One clown school? Oh no, I mean it's hey, they're all clown schools out here, man. Talking about USC? That's right. Boom, burn. No, I'm just kidding. I love USC. It's a beautiful campus. No. Yeah, no, that's, believe it or not, that is just normal street activity. That guy comes by like clockwork, several times a day.
I lived in Manhattan for 5 years, and even that never happened to me. Never had just someone honking a bike horn walking down the street.
LA's an exciting city. Yeah. If we get lucky later, we may have like some sort of like food truck pull up and just be blasting like Turkey in the Straw at top volume for like 45 minutes before it rolls on.
Right outside your door specifically? Is that the spot?
Yeah, I think everyone likes to park right below my window and just let her rip. It's nice. It's a nice part of town, and I can afford it because
that must be why. Yeah.
People pay top dollar to be a DM. It's a great career, and
I wonder if I wonder if that's on the apartment thing. It's like, it's a great location and the rent's cheap because we're subsidized by all these people who just chill outside the window and make noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think anyone's engaged in some sort of like coalition partnership with the street vendors yet, but that is a great idea. We can like block out 30-minute periods of time on the sidewalk in front of the apartment building and like charge for it. That's a business plan.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I'm into it. I'll do it. I'll start doing it right after this interview. I'll head out.
So, I guess you've been DMing for a long time. How, like, where did you kind of come up? Where, like, what kind of got you into DMing as a whole? And is this kind of like your thing now? Like, do you consider yourself like a full-time DM, or do you sort of spread it around?
Yeah, no, great question. I was just ruminating on that. Like, how long have I been a DM for? I basically have always been obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons. Like, some of my earliest memories, I think, go back to, before I ever played a game of D&D, I thought about it for like 3 years. I think maybe 3 or 4 years, probably from the ages of like, say 5 to 9 or 10. I knew what D&D was, but I was too young to like actually play a game, so I would just sit around and just imagine what the tomb of like a god would look like, or like imagine the inside of wizard towers. And then eventually I was like, oh, I think I could actually start. I should maybe just play a game with people. Like that's possible as well.
Hmm.
Like it didn't even dawn on me that you could play it. I was just like, oh, it's just a thing I think about all the time. Um, my older brother played D&D, so I knew about it through him. And my mom actually had friends who played it when she was in college. This was like the very, very first edition.
Yeah.
We might still have it, like the original, not even AD&D, you know what I mean? Like Dungeons and Dragons intro set for like right when it stopped being whatever
When
the progenitor.
it stopped being chainmail, which was the
It was chainmail,
yeah,
right? Is what it was.
that was
Yeah,
1970, 75 or 76, I think.
that would have been just, yeah, exactly, right around there. I think that was my mom played it then, so I don't know, maybe it was in my genes or something like that. But yeah, so I mean, growing up, I always just was. I'm a middle child. I
Hmm.
have three brothers, and a common thing that middle children do is just they tend to be daydreamers, and I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but it's always been the case for me. So I've always just been like kind of like off in my own world, like imagining stuff, spending most of my time thinking about things that don't exist, and then every now and then I'm bothered by like um, having to figure out like, oh, got to get my car fixed or something like that. Like, it really bothers me because that's time that I'm not like thinking about like how goblins reproduce or whatever. So that's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I've just always
I
I yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I very much sympathize. I was the same way as a kid, except for me, it wasn't like D&D or anything like that originally. I just started drawing, and so that was my
Mhm.
outlet for a lot of that. And I was like, I grew up drawing monsters because that's what kind of wandered around in my head all day instead of school. It was just
Yeah.
drawing monsters and stuff.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, so yeah, that's how I kind of got started. I finally was in my like local hobby shop in back in Lakewood, Colorado, Colpar Hobbies, which sadly doesn't sell RPG stuff anymore. Last time I went back, I like stopped by. Last
Yeah.
time I was back home to like check it out and like support the local hobby store that I never would have gotten started if it wasn't in my neighborhood.
Hmm.
And they just sell like, model rocket kits and like magic. Do they sell Magic? I'm not sure they sell Magic the Gathering, but it's a hobby store still. But the section for role playing game stuff is just one little shelf,
That
and it's like
that
it's all like fourth edition stuff that they're just trying to close out.
That just reminds me of like this one time I don't remember where I was. It was in a town that I didn't really know, and I saw a hobby store, and I wanted to go in because I was playing Warhammer at the time, right? I was
Warhammer,
Yeah, I was painting and collecting Warhammer kits, and
Warhammer 40K or Warhammer.
40K. I started with
Ah,
second edition in like 1996, and that was
second edition.
just on
So
the
that's
yeah, it was just on the time the kind of cusp of where it rolled over in a third. But just like you said, like I went to this hobby, it said hobbies on the front, and I didn't know this store, and I walk in and I'm like, this is model trains and nothing else. And
model trains.
I'm like, oh, not a cool hobby store. This is just one of the boring ones.
They're not with it. Yeah, it was really depressing because the last time so I stopped by. I was like, okay, well the RPG systems section is small, but I was like, I'll buy dice. I wanted to buy dice for the Crit Juice guys because I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this would be great. I was home for Christmas. I was in a gift giving mood. I was like, oh, cool. I'll buy like dice from my home store, and I was like, hey, show me your D20s, and they didn't. I played with 6 guys, and they had 4 or 5 D20s. They didn't have enough D20s for me to buy one. Dirty, the sad little like dirty plastic box with like the ugliest colors of D20s that no one wanted that
Oh
have been there for
man.
years. And yeah, and but without that store in my neighborhood, I may never have actually started playing the game because that didn't happen until I they sold back in the early 90s or whenever it was I started playing. They had a second edition complete box set. It was this big, I think it was a yellow box. I've never seen it anywhere since, but it had these like, it had like a real tiny basic version of the DMG and the player's handbook
Yeah.
and monster manual for second edition. and some maps, some cool maps and adventures to play through. And I remember so clearly the first summer day that I like sat down and we actually played a game with my first group. This little group of like a couple of my brothers, a couple of my cousins, and a couple of friends got together. We played through a game, and that game just turned into the campaign that we played from like 1998 until, gosh, I mean, the chronology doesn't really matter here, but
Yeah.
we just wrapped up. We just completed playing that game basically last about 6 months ago.
Oh
We
wow.
played like, yeah, we played like a 20-something year campaign. We went all the way from first level up through like 20th level, and then I finally took them into an epic level, and
Did they win?
it was.
Did they win, or did you kill them?
I tried really hard to kill them, but you know what the problem is we got through. We took it from second edition into third edition, and then we never segued into fifth edition, fourth or fifth. And out here in California, the different groups I've been playing with have been fourth and fifth edition.
Yeah.
To come back into third edition, my DMing skills were so kind of off. It was really hard to gauge the difficulty of encounters. So my one big regret is I was a little rusty coming into the final encounter.
That's actually a problem that I've been sort of dealing with, because when I started dungeon mastering, essentially, I started back with fourth edition. That was the first edition that I really got my hands on as a DM.
You started with fourth.
I mean, I didn't start playing with fourth, but I started DMing in fourth edition.
Okay.
And then and then that was mostly due to Roll20, and then becoming a thing, because at that point all of my I played a little bit of fourth edition in one of my friends' apartments during college, but by the time I got around to DMing, everyone I knew at all had moved away, and it was like, I don't know if you were this way, but I mention this a lot, but when we were just kids on the internet for like the 2000s, we were all looking for a way to play D&D online because we all had online friends, but there was no such. I mean, there were a couple of clunky tools, but there was no real way to do it.
Roll20 is totally revolutionizing the game.
Absolutely.
There's still room there to get even a better system. It's still not quite as smooth as I'd like it to be, but
it's not perfect. Like, there is plenty of room for them to improve the system, but it's so easy to use and get into, and so easy to connect people for a game that, like, without Roll20, there would be no D&D on Twitch. I am 100% positive of that, right?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story about playing it online, man. That was so when I say I've been playing that campaign with that group, that's the longest running campaign I've done.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Obviously, like, that's a long ass time.
Yeah.
So, and it also made me realize how badly addicted I am to playing D&D. So we started playing when I was in middle school, I guess, probably. Yeah. Through high school, college. I graduated from college and ended up going to Japan and living in Japan for about 3 years, teaching English, and then a third year just backpacking around and doing volunteer work, kind of. So during that time, I still couldn't. I was always just constantly thinking about D&D and wanting to play, and I didn't. I couldn't put together a group out in Japan. There's just, language barriers alone. Mm-hmm. So we would try and figure out an online solution to be playing D&D online, and this is 2006 or so.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was Fantasy Grounds and what is it? What's the other one? Map Tools.
We found no good solutions.
Yeah.
We were using we would have to use like multiple Skype and Google Hangout accounts to try and like do a workaround, and we were using these like really janky whiteboard programs that you could do like virtual meetings on to try and bring in like maps and stuff. But we kept it up. Like, we would played regularly until I got back to America and we could start playing in person. And around that time I was like, man, I am hooked on this stuff for life.
Yeah.
Like, this is so, I don't know, but it's good stuff, man.
It is. And the thing about it is, again, like, I remember I was in like 2006, about around then, 2007, 2008, and it's like, and we'd be on these we'd be talking online. It's like, oh, we want to try playing D&D. Oh, there's this program called Fantasy Grounds, but it costs money, so here's like a pirate torrent link, and everyone has to download it, and then you have to install it, and then you have to and no one could get it right, so like you had 4 people trying to install this program and failing, and it's like, all right, let's just not even bother. So Roll20 is a godsend. But the thing is, like, that. So when I was on Roll20, I played a lot of games, but I ended up transitioning to Pathfinder. And I have a group, my home group, that I've been playing with for about 3 years now, going 3.5 years at this point. Where it's a Pathfinder campaign, and I don't do any Pathfinder on stream anymore. Right, my stream is where I play so much of D&D these days, so much role playing. Almost all of it is 5th edition, with some small exceptions. So, like, when I go back to my Pathfinder game, I actually end up forgetting so many rules and all these things. And I'm so lucky that my players are, like, they don't play, like, other games. They just play this one. And so, like, they will tell me, like, when I'm like, okay, so the enemy, the monster is gonna grapple you. I'm rolling against your, and the players are like, yeah, it's this, and then if he wants to do damage, he can maintain, and like they'll tell me the rules, but they don't mind. Like, it doesn't break their enjoyment of the game to have to remind me of the rules at all, which is lucky for me, because I would be horrible if I had to like constantly wait. Let me check the SRD real quick.
It's really hard to maintain, to keep so many rules.
It is, yeah.
At the same time, just within one edition, I was like, when 3 and 3.5 are out, I was just a compendium of the rules and the info, and like I just committed so much of so many of those books to memory, where you'd be talking with friends or something like that, and you'd be like, oh man, that gives me a really good idea to like use this feat from one of the Eberron source books. Maybe that would work with like one of the skills that they had in like Forgotten Realms.
Yeah. And
when 4th edition came out, I felt so deeply betrayed by Wizards of the Coast. It really broke my will. There's one of the reasons I think I never really got into 4th edition. There's a couple of reasons I never enjoyed 4th edition that much. But one of them was I was just like looking at the new books they were coming out with, and I was like, I can't.
Yeah.
So much of my brain is given over to 3.5. I've got to I can't just immediately start adding 4th edition to that. So... And then, so I kind of, but then 4th edition made it easy. You didn't have to.
Yeah.
3rd edition, you kind of had to memorize massive chunks of rule data.
The thing
4th edition was dumbing it down and making it easy.
The thing about 4th edition too was, and I don't know if it made it easier for you, but it definitely did for me, is the digital tools that they had were made life a lot easier for me. Like there was a thing that that someone made for 4th edition that I so desperately wish existed for like 5th or something, is when I played 4th edition, I used these online character sheets where you could take that Wizards official character builder.
Yeah.
You could take an export file from that and upload it as a character sheet, and it would have this digital character sheet that would just populate everything. It would have your feats all there. It would tell you what roles were for everything, and it would pull the information from the official Wizards compendium for what everything did. So it's like you never had to worry about looking things up. It was always just right there. And I'm like, digital tools, man, everyone should be working on the digital tools right now, because that is how things are going. Like, honestly, I was so mad at Wizards. I've been mad at Wizards for the longest time just for not having an SRD, like the Pathfinder one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Agreed. I don't know though. I'm such a purist when it comes to the pen and paper. So the group, the Crit Juice group that I'm playing with, is, as you probably know, 4th edition. Is all of them had never played D&D before 4th edition came out, which was as I was just saying, was me being like, this is the least D&D that D&D has ever been D&D. And to them, it is D&D. And it's been really fascinating now that we've come off of our hiatus and picked up 5th edition. They've made their new characters. We're using the whole 5th edition rule set, and it's blowing their little minds to try and if you know nothing but 4th edition and then to try and play 5th edition.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird and strange. And I'm like, no, it's really, really normal. This is 4th edition.
Yeah, I get that, how that transition can be weird.
It's almost like, to me, it feels like like if you the only Star Wars movies you'd ever seen were the prequels.
Oh
You know, if
God.
you'd only ever seen like 1, 2, and 3, and you're like, that's Star Wars to
This
me.
is so
Yeah, that's
slow and
cool.
boring. Where's the fight scene sucks.
But liking, and I could see you if you didn't know anything else about Star Wars and you only saw that, you'd still be into it. Maybe you'd be like, "Wow, lightsabers are cool and Jedi's are cool and Gungans are really like funny and interesting." And that trait, and you'd be like, "Okay, wait, watch these ones, watch 4, 5, and 6, because these ones are like real Star Wars." And you'd be like, "This is weird. I don't know if I get this." Anyway, that's how it feels to me trying to take these guys from 4th edition into 5th edition.
Yeah.
And that whole thing you were saying about the character creation, where it's like, that's all I hear from them about character creation. I was like, the first time I was like, okay, guys, so like roll up your characters for 5th edition, and like they're all like,
What program do I use?
Yes, exactly. They're like, how? What do you? How do I roll it up? And I was like, well, the way you always do. And then I realized, oh, they never had to do it because the character generator for 4th edition was all you would ever use, because it was impossible to do it otherwise unless you had every book for 4th edition.
Yeah.
Or had the one digital program. So even taking them through and being like, okay, well, this is like how you're gonna roll 4d6 and you're gonna put those stats in, and like here's how you figure out your modifiers. To me, that's what D&D, like, that is.
Yeah.
Think of D&D, that's like the first thing I think of, and to them it's like not what they're used to. So it's been very interesting, and I've been loving getting them into the crunchier, earthier, more organic and original side of D&D, the kind of like that 1st edition, 2nd edition
Opening a
feeling
rule book is what you mean.
Opening a rule book. Yeah. Having your character sheet in front of you and marking off things in pencil. I really love the tactile side. I'm old school in a lot of ways, but I guess that carries over into my love of D&D and really liking having the pen and the paper. Even if they had a total digital tool from Wizards of the Coast that I could use with a tablet, I wouldn't use it, because I just love, for me, the experience of playing D&D is so much the physical rolling of dice. Like, I hate using digital dice rollers. I only use it if there's no other option available to me. Got to roll the physical dice, and then I have my actual character sheet that I'm gonna like mark things down on. And to me, I like that. That's what I really love to do.
There's a lot of things, a lot of interesting things there. And one of the things, the first thing I wanted to say is you reminded me a little bit when 5th edition had just sort of hit the shelves, and Critical Role was blowing up, and everyone was figuring out that D&D is a cool thing and doing it themselves. I was on I was doing a lot of social media and stuff back then, and one of the things I consistently saw was people saying like, "Oh, I'm learning how to play D&D," and they had a book in front of them and it was open, and they were like, and I'm like, that's not something I've seen in a long time, like you reminded me of that, and I guess it has been a while since you were able to sort of just crack open a book and start playing, because because there was so much of it.
They married it to the digital system in 4th edition, and I think at the time it didn't bother me that much, because I was like, that's the wave of the future. And there were some really convenient qualities. Like, as a DM, I loved having the monster database that I could search through.
Yeah.
I'm looking for this challenge rating to this challenge rating, and I want it to be this type, and I have everything in front of me. But it really did take it away from its roots so far that people didn't have books. And when 5th edition came around, man, back when they were calling it D&D Next, and I was jumping on the beta for that, I don't know if I'd ever been happier in my life going through the first pages of the beta rule sets that they had kind of circulated out for feedback, and being like, oh my God, it's not D&D 4.5.
Yeah.
Which is what I thought for sure they're buckling down. They got people in charge of it who really care about D&D as a property and what it means to them, and the imagination and the unlimited ability to create things in front of you. I don't know where I'm going with that, but you know what I mean? Like, it just felt like I was going back to the roots and what really made D&D great. It just delighted me so much. Like, exactly like you were saying, seeing people sitting there with the books open in front of them, which I never thought I would ever see again. Yeah. It's real delight. It's awesome.
The one thing that I noticed a lot when I looked at the early playtest data and stuff for D&D Next and 5th edition was I had two feelings on it. The first was that I felt like they had started designing a D&D rule set, and then somewhere at the middle they had just sort of stopped and said, No, it's good. Just publish it. But the second thing that I figured was they had written in a lot of very vague things into the rulebook that a lot of things it seemed they were drawing a lot of inspiration less from D&D and Legacy D&D, but more like it felt like half Legacy D&D and half sort of born of these newer kind of lightweight games powered by the Apocalypse stuff and newer non D20 systems.
100%. Yeah. Because totally. Because first edition is like, in second edition, third edition even, are just brutal number slogs. Oh, I've lost you.
Yeah, no, I just I'm having some Skype issues, some video crackling, so I just turned off my camera to see if that would free up some bandwidth. I don't know. Well,
sorry.
No, it's probably it's most likely on my end. Just keep going. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like, first, second, third edition are all such brutal numbers games where you're just endlessly calculating modifiers and modifier adjustments. Yeah, and you're totally right. Fifth edition, they were like, okay, let's just make it simplified and common sense and narrative driven, exactly like you were saying, powered by the Apocalypse, all that. So yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been great. So yeah, I've been a lifelong fan, and it's been awesome to be playing fifth edition as well. I'm so excited for it. I hope they keep fifth edition around for a long time. I love the books. All the books they've been coming out with have been such candy. Chris Perkins is like an absolute personal hero of mine.
Yeah.
I finally got a follow. He finally started following me on Twitter, which I didn't think would happen. I don't know if he's gonna follow me on Twitter, but after following for long enough, he followed me, and I was like,
I had the same reaction. It was probably about 6 months ago or something like that, and I was like, why? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Why? Because he's an awesome dude. Because he's a totally cool guy who just gets it. He's the best, man. I love him.
I love him. I can never forgive him though for taking my time slot with his show.
Oh, what do you mean?
He decided just after we started the talk show, he decided to do his game on Tuesday night in the same time slot, and I can never forgive him for that.
Right. Yeah, you can't hold that against him. I run Never Tell Me the Odds and Crit Juice opposite of Critical Role. It's just the time that works for the people that I have. So,
yeah.
There's a finite period of time available, and at the end, it's the tide that raises all boats, right? Like as any of our shows and everything that people do out there succeed and get viewers, it just helps all of us who are passionate about that same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's just it's a great environment to be in, regardless. You don't. I personally I love people to watch my shows, but honestly, as long as you're watching something, as long as you're promoting role playing, especially on Twitch, in some way, then by all means support everyone.
Developing the passion for the hobby, yeah, absolutely. The more people that get excited about it, the more people they tell about it, and they get excited, and then there's just more to go around for everyone.
Well, also just because, and again, I come from the position less as someone who works outside. Streaming is now what I do. It's my thing, and so I desperately want to see. I love every time Twitch, the company comes and say, hey, we wanna do a spotlight of tabletop role playing channels on the front page, right? Anytime they decide they want to give a shout out or they want to support the growing roleplay community, among streamers and entertainers, and kind of, I think it helps push D&D and role playing as legitimate entertainment, which is something is a huge thing that I have been loving watching grow. Yeah,
it is. It's as people begin to know what it is when I tell somebody about it. When they say, "What do you do?" Oh, well, I'm a dungeon master for D&D. I've had the reactions that I've had to people when I tell them that. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a dungeon master.
Yeah.
I remember very vividly, I think, when I was in college telling somebody that and literally getting the reaction, and I'm sure I could still get this reaction today, from someone looking at me and going, "You're joking? Seriously?" And I'm like, "Yeah, D&D is great. Dungeons and Dragons." Couldn't believe it. Thought it was
the concept of that game was only a joke, that it wasn't a real thing that people did.
I have a job outside of streaming, because New York is crazy expensive, and I was at work, and there's a friend of mine who I worked with. He totally gets it, like the streaming thing, the D&D thing. He doesn't he plays D&D, and I think he plays board games, so he knows. But like there was this other girl that kind of stopped by in our department. And somehow she had found out that I play D&D, but I don't think she knew that I was an entertainer. And so she's like, "So when you play D&D, do you like dress up?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm just too lazy." She's like, "Oh, it's like cuz I totally would." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you?" She's like, I don't know. But like I tell people, like, she's like, "What do you do outside of work?" And I'm like, "Well, I stream D&D for a living, like." And people are like, "How is that a thing? Like, how can that be possible?" Like, I don't know how it is possible, It's just a thing.
I feel like that I get that incredulity across the board when it comes to streaming in general.
Yeah.
When I say streaming, and people go, that thing where people watch people play video games, and I go, that's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
no, exactly.
Games too. And people are like, oh, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm like, oh well, that's fine. Doesn't matter if you get
it makes very little sense to me too, but you know what? I love doing it. Is all I can say.
Great community. I think that's one thing people don't understand is what an amazing community of people there are, who in streaming and in role-playing games in general, like it's just such awesome environment to be in, because there's so much support and consideration and understanding that I really don't see it in other places, outside of these communities. It's really almost overwhelming sometimes. I'm sure you felt that.
Yeah,
a lot.
The role-playing game community, whether it be our little kind of corner of the internet here on this channel or just the wider community as a whole, is made up of people that are more supportive and more kind of giving and just generally good people than I think like any community has a right to. Like, it's just sometimes it's you don't really know how to deal with the support and the kind of thing. Like it's because everyone everyone is just having a good time and no one's out to kind of ruin everyone's fun, like, which is strange because the internet and Twitch especially has a lot of communities that are not particularly known for being like the greatest. Like they're some game streaming and stuff like that has communities that can get a little bit iffy, but I've never experienced that in the role-playing game community. Like the viewers, the other streamers, they're all just they're all fantastic.
Yeah, it's wonderful, definitely.
So I guess you guys, now I wanted to talk a little bit about the about your show specifically. I don't want to just gush about D&D editions all the time, because one of the things that I think that was interesting is you guys, obviously with a name like Crit Juice, you guys are famous for your heavy drinking, which
abusive levels of drinking. Yes.
Yeah, which is a thing that I actually stole back when we started the stream. We had drinking rules in play for 1 out of 3 of our shows, but it was a lot of fun. I think you guys do a little bit more than we ever did, but
it takes a special mix of people. Yeah, well, the guys just love drinking. I can't drink. When I go back and listen to episodes that we do where, because sometimes we'll have a beer sponsor or something like that, where there'll just be something extremely delicious. Like, there's been a few companies where I'm like, okay, I'll have some of that. Okay, I'll have a little more of that. But then I go back and I listen, and just as a DM, and you get this as a DM, like, you're juggling. You're like juggling like just so many balls at once to try and keep a game fun and engaging and moving forward and hitting your time slot that you need to fit everything into, and not railroading and remembering these monster stats and who's next and all these things. Yeah. And when you get drunk, it just I hear it. I go, I can't do this. So I try and keep myself as sober as possible. But the guys definitely enjoy. On the other hand, the guys get sloshed, and then we play again like the next time, and I go, okay, so you guys
do you remember?
You guys are in the Flying Citadel, and everyone goes, what?
What? Yeah.
Like, all we did last time was get you inside of a giant flying citadel, and they go, barely remember anything. Okay.
The funny thing I was gonna say, it never happened to me, but I heard a lot. I used to play guitar, and I heard a lot of people tell me that they played better when they were drunk, and I'm like, have you ever listened to yourself? And so I I was gonna say, like, you don't think that you DM better when you're drunk? You know, like that's
no. I probably think I'm funnier when I'm drunk, but no. I mean, yeah, I can tell. I can feel it. Like I feel myself getting drunk, and then I'll be like, oh no, and I can just feel like the higher brain functions that I need, like slipping out of my grasp. You know, like I'll be like, whoa, that was one drink too many.
It kind of the way it kind of happened on our show was just like a couple of our players liked drinking a lot, and they were like, well, we're gonna be drinking anyway, so if you just wanna go ahead. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? We'll make it, on a, what we did was, our rules were on a nat 20, the party has sabotaged the DM, so the DM has to drink. On a nat 1, the party has been sabotaged, so they have to drink. And, we donations and followers and stuff, everyone has to drink. And it was, it was a blast. We were, the one time I ever did, I think what you guys do, where like the donations to drink, it was a birthday stream, and I got demolished in a bad way.
Yeah, we don't usually drink. We don't usually tie donations directly into drinking because it would kill us. I think for sure. So the donations we generally tie more into story elements or making the guys do some sort of competition or antic at the table or something like that. And then I think at the top of the stream you can buy us a shot, and we all have to take shots. And then after that, donations do not directly buy drinks anymore, because people will be like, oh great, cool, a fun way to like kill some people like live, like let's just keep buying them drinks.
That was I made that mistake on my birthday. I was like, what can we do? Well, I have a bottle of vodka here, $2 shots. Every $2 donation is a shot. And I massively underestimated my friends who would come into the stream and be like, here's $20. And I'm like,
yourself. Good friends.
It was not a good night. I was bad that night.
No doubt.
So like you guys, I mean, but I think that's one of the things that I found really fun is, and one of the reasons that I so miss sort of that table dynamic is kind of the especially you guys fit so much with Saving Throw Show, because they're really into the, doing funny stuff around a table, like just to keep the entertainment and keep the engagement up.
Yeah, that's always been Cridge's from the beginning. Yeah, and we're drinking enough with all of our other drinking rules already, because we drink on a 20, we drink on a 1, we drink when initiative is rolled, we drink when any of our 3 to 6 drinking god rules are engaged over the course of a game. So there's constant drinking anyway, so it's like we don't need to add donations onto that. Yeah. That would just be silly.
So I guess do you have like now the one thing I'm really interested in is, because you're running a couple different shows, what do you kind of consider yourself as a DM? Like where do your preferences lie? Are you like huge into the world building thing and planning sort of epic campaigns? Are you more of an improv guy?
That's a great question. I feel like I need to have a story that's going to excite me when I DM something. Like that's the starting point, is that I need to be excited when I come to the table. I need to come up with something. Generally, that's a story that I'm going to tell. Mm-hmm. But obviously, in D&D, you can't get too... In D&D, in any RPG, right? Really, in anything, like the improv is the soul of it, right? So you can't storyteller railroad. I mean, I learned that early on when I was DMing years and years ago, that you can't come and be like, here's the story that's going to happen, and then be like, oh, no, the players are immediately not doing anything I want, and I can't make them, and if I try and make them, it ruins everything. So, yeah, it's so much better to... I guess it's not like... it's a story that's going to excite me in the way of some sort of really cool emotional beat or element that I want to reach. That's kind of my ideal as a DM, is reaching... Mm-hmm. Is when we can part the veil of reality for a moment and I'm at the table with them, and it's like the room is gone and the table is gone, and I tell them something that happens, and they respond as what their character is doing, and when it feels very real, that like this is a really honest moment. It almost like it's a really transcendental thing. It kind of transcends even like theater or something like that, because it's
Yeah.
not like a practiced role where it's programmed to play out in this way. It's this moment where you are like, yes, this is the moment. If you listen to some of the older Crit Juice episodes, Tom Fonz's character Gub, the Dragonborn, is a hard drinking, hard loving Dragonborn tough mudder, and he wrote like several pages of backstory for me after we started playing.
Yeah.
And he mentioned in passing this like old flame of his, this female Dragonborn named Dovana. And so I read through everything, and you kind of let it sit and ferment in your brain for a little while. And I remember, like, I was like, what am I gonna do? What's gonna be happening up here? And then hitting on this idea of like, oh my God, I've got to have Dovana walk right into this story and walk right back into his life and see what happens. And that, I thought, got me so excited, and I couldn't wait to do it at the table. And when we got to the table, I did that kind of thing where someone shows up and it's a shadowy figure, and who is it? And I'm dropping the hints, and then when Tom's slow realization hit and he turned and he went, Dovana? And this like real moment of him not expecting it, and then totally getting it in character. And there's these amazing moments like that. That is what, as a DM, so I guess it makes me lean much more towards the narrative than the mechanical or the combat based, but I'm trying to find those moments where the characters really come alive to their players, and they can kind of inhabit that.
I think
if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you in that sense. Like, I love building those moments. I think my problem is I plan them too far out, because so my problem as a DM, and I know this is my problem, I just don't know how to solve it, is that I think way too long term. To the point where like I will usually start when the campaign starts, like I'm setting into motion storylines that are not gonna resolve until way later, and almost universally without fail, by the time they actually kind of roll back into the mix and they start, clues start dropping, the players have long since forgotten that about it, and I'm like what's up?
Yeah, whether they're drinking or not, anybody's gonna forget. Even really attentive players are gonna miss these clues.
Yeah, and that's
my advice too on that would be that's exactly the same thing I was doing for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Crit Juice when I started playing that originally, being like, okay, yeah, oh my God, there was a massive story plot. But in fact, the entire point of Crit Juice was to set up this particular revelation at the very end that was going to totally reframe the entire story.
Yeah.
That I never ended up getting to, because I realized that no one was paying attention to any of the clues or keeping any of that straight except for me. And to kind of drop to my mind, I'd be like dropping the mic and being like, and then this, and realizing it would have zero impact.
Yeah, basically.
Because it wasn't based in their characters, really, and that's where all the story has to come from. But here's my advice to you, and here's what really helped me. I started planning entire storylines had to fit within 3 game sessions, 4 maximum.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, whatever the big storyline needed to be, it was going to resolve itself in 4 sessions. So, it's pretty hard to do. I started doing it with my Star Wars game that I run, Never Tell Me the Odds, which is also on Saving Throw. Also on Thursdays, it switches off with Crit Juice. But yeah, so in that, I basically was like, okay, so I'm going to tell an entire story, 3 sessions. It needs to have a conclusion by here. And it just forces you to condense what you want to tell to the players. And I found that you really don't lose anything. Like, whatever the big emotional beat is that I want to hit, that big awesome story moment, if you get there in 3 or 4 sessions, the players are on board because they're following it.
Mm-hmm.
And all the story beats have to come like one after another. And if you go longer than that, people lose the threads and it doesn't deliver. So I don't know. Try that as an experiment sometime and see how you like it. It's really challenging from a story perspective to try and tell an interesting, complete story in such a short period of time.
I think I'm with the concept mostly because one of the biggest challenges and the biggest kind of kicks in the ass as a DM that I ever faced, and I've mentioned this a few times in the past, but was when I started DMing on stream. One of the things when working with other channels and stuff, one of the things that I sort of had to learn how to do was run a one shot, because you never, you don't really do a lot of one shots, as just a DM out in the ether, right? Like you're not really asked to, hey, can you come DM on our stream today?
Yeah.
But if but once you start doing that, like people say, hey, would you like to come guest DM this, or we have a marathon, would you like sit in? And they say, okay, you have 3 hours for a one shot, and that means in that 3 hours you have to give your players a setup and a hook for them to follow. You have to have some kind of rising action and unfolding. You have to have some kind of cool encounter or experience. You have to have a climax, and then you have to have a satisfying conclusion, right? All in 3 hours, probably less, because you have to deal with, stream-based stuff, and also, like, players, joking around and not getting on board and stuff. So it's like, when you can figure out as a DM, when you figure out how you can cram all that stuff into one single, like, 2.5, 3 hour block, and make it feel coherent and make the players feel like they went from giving, a hook to accomplishing something. Yeah, taking that and expanding it to 3 sessions, for a campaign makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally. No, that's a great point. Running one shots that feel satisfying to everyone involved is an excellent challenge. I've actually come to really enjoy running one shots. It can be because for the same reasons I've been enjoying that 3 session or 4 session structure, where you just go, you come up with like, okay, here's where I'm going to begin, and here's how I kind of want to end them, and then one shots almost feel like you're doing like a trapeze act, like a high flying trapeze act. They're kind of exhilarating, where you're like, oh my god, can we do this? Like, I've like just you're just really flying by the seat of your pants and trying to just connect loose strands and connect everything and make it feel like a nice
trim it, just trimming things on the fly, and like, this is gonna take too long, throw it out, or oh god, they finished the fight and they still have a half hour. How do I kill a half hour?
They're still talking with the king. Okay, I guess he's gotta turn into a dragon right now. It can be fun. It can be really fun. Yeah, great point. Yeah, one shots are a real interesting challenge.
Yeah, and I liken them. I don't know if you've heard. I'm come from an art background, so I liken them to figure drawing. You kind of give yourself a shorter and shorter time window, and then once you go to a longer session, you're like, oh, I have forever. I'm not, just, it's too much time. I don't know what to do with it all.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think that's kind of my problem, is I was never thinking in small arcs, and so when I think of things like that, it tends to be really convoluted and really complex. And like the thing is, I get proud of this when I write something that is like okay. I won't tell the whole story, but I will tell you an abbreviated version. So my campaign that I play on Fridays, my home game that I've been playing with forever. The players originally their first hook was to go after this drug lord that had personally wronged all of them, right? So they did. They went after him, and they found that he was working on some drugs that when they got, like these super drugs, that when they got to his place, were gone. Someone had taken them, and that.
What is the system you're playing in?
This is all Pathfinder.
Pathfinder.
And so that sort of set into motion a chain of events that they weren't seeing. They essentially went from mission to mission. The missions were given to them by the guard, but like one of the missions was to go undercover with this other crime boss, and he had them do 3 things, and each of the things that he had them to do were like all very obviously setting this crime lord up to have more power, right? They were doing things for him. They were clearing enemies out. Were securing things for him, right? They were solidifying his position. So at the end of it, when they finally killed that guy, right, which they were supposed to do, essentially what it did was they learned something that put a bow on everything. Like, it tied up all of the things that they'd been doing perfectly to basically make it seem like, oh shit, all this stuff that you just did, you just made some evil person somewhere, you know, a lot of money and a lot of power, right?
Classic evil villain plot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they were like, and I in my head, that's such a poetic, like, it's such a poetic setup, but I think it took too long to develop, and so by the time it got there, like, it was just, they reacted a little bit, but it was kind of lukewarm.
Yeah, the long payoff. The other thing is, I think it needs to tie into the actual characters themselves, because you're never going to get a huge reaction from characters, from players, when the big final culmination of this many sessions payoff is that some NPC that they have, you know, even however close that relationship is, it's hard to make that something happening to that NPC feel like as big of a thing as you're like, as cutting off the player's arm or something like that, cutting off the character's arm.
Yeah.
Where you're like, and then you know that they'll be like, oh my god, and then you're like, okay, but that didn't even mean anything, you know. So yeah, for sure, it's a challenge, man. It's a real challenge. And walking that fine line between making things seem too obvious or too subtle, like that's such a hard line to calibrate.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to ruin this. I don't want to be overplaying my hand constantly, but I also, like, if I make anything hard to notice, I'm almost guaranteed that they will not notice it. So what do you do?
That's actually, I have a game right now. On Saturdays we play this horror game that is, the world is completely homebrew and everything about it is a mystery. And I'm kind of, when I'm writing, like, I realized early on, because my inspirations came a lot from video games for writing that, the way video game story structures play out and things like that. But I realized that didn't translate very well to tabletop, because whereas a video game, you can easily you can make players notice something via on-screen graphics, right? Like a detail on the wall they might notice, or you could give them an item with a description, right? That, yeah, okay, this can tell them a little bit about what they but in a role-playing game, you don't have that. You just have what they choose to look at and what they choose to pay attention to, unless you direct them. But so one of the things, so I realized very early on that I was going to be fighting constantly with that too much, not enough information dichotomy, right? And so I sort of settled on the solution that everything that I tell them will mean something, just not obviously. Like, everything that shows up in the game is carefully chosen to mean something. It's just what that means may not be readily obvious right this second, but because I don't have, there's no other, I don't know any other way to do it, right? I don't know how to better deliver information about an entirely mysterious world. I think we're having...
That sounds very challenging, I agree.
Hold on one second, I'm having Skype breaking up a little bit here. We doing all right? Is Skype doing all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, yeah, there we go. I don't know. Skype is being hell on my end, which happens.
Sorry.
As
But
no,
that's
it's
not
here.
my signal. What can I close down here? Maybe something. But yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that sounds like a serious challenge. Mysteries, I think, writing mysteries in any form are like one of the most challenging stories to tell.
Yeah.
In an RPG setting, for exactly the reasons you're talking about. It hinges on you writing that line exactly for the entire campaign, and like giving people hints that aren't frustrating, but are also like, yeah, it's complex. I ran one once. The only time I've ever really run a mystery game, I ran a mystery one-shot in the Star Wars game called, punningly called Star Wars. Like
Okay.
Noir,
Yeah.
Star Wars. Yeah, a little bit labored there. That was really fun. It ended up being a one-shot where it worked, and like I was able to like give a couple clues, and then that led people where they needed to go, and I was able to bait the hook pretty well there. But I was like, I can't imagine. As a one-shot, I was fine with it, but like if I was like trying to tease out mysteries over several sessions, you almost would need to treat each session as a one-shot. Is probably how I'd approach it. Where like there's a mystery, it gets resolved. Like each session is them resolving a mystery, and then that mystery leads them into the next higher step as part of the overall arc or something like that. But you almost would have to keep feeding them the food pellets, right? As it
Basically,
were. Like,
yeah.
giving them a little treat to keep them on the path.
the way that I've been doing it basically, and here I think one of the things that I have worked on that has helped me a lot is, as a DM, I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but one piece of advice I heard a long time ago said, always, always, always end your session on a cliffhanger, no matter what, because that's how you keep the player's energy up between the sessions, right?
Yes, definitely, unless it's your final session, of course. But yeah,
Yeah.
to end on some sort of exciting moment, a cliffhanger.
And so when you're running a mystery game, right, cliffhangers are your best friends, because you can spend sessions sort of answering, like you said, answering sort of a little bit of one mystery, right, and then sort of somewhere at the end you drop some new information or something new that they've never seen before, or something that freaks them out, and then that's where you cut things, and it's like now you have them baited and primed for the next session, because now they have, okay, we got a little bit more information, but there's now something even bigger. The problem is, I am in my head, like, that's not something that can keep going on forever, right? I mean, you can do that forever, but I don't think it'll stay interesting forever, which is why I'm slowly sort of working, opening the world up. It's just, for me, it takes it took a little while to, I think we're finally in that campaign getting to the point where the world itself is going to open up to the players, because they've sort of been invested in it and they've learned all the ins and outs by this point, right? And so now we can sort of, and that's how I tend to do things, is I tend to take a little, like maybe about 10, 15 sessions of just doing world building stuff and getting the players familiar with the setting, the NPCs, how things work. And then we double back and we start doing character backstory stuff, essentially, tying in their stories and bringing in their things like that, because I have
a totally different approach. I totally go from character background first. I come up with the world building. I think you were asking me about this a minute ago. About do I prefer world building? I love the world building side of things. For our Crit Juice campaign, we have this really amazing fan, Austin Pritchett, who does fantasy cartography. He created this amazing map. So he's like, I want to create a new map for your new campaign. And I sent him loads of notes, and we spent weeks and weeks coming up with this amazing, giant, beautiful map that has all these mystical locations on it. So I love the world building so much. But when I start, I in a campaign, I start with character background. I love getting whatever the players tell me about their characters. I sift through that and try and find little bits from it that I can insert into spots in the world that will enrich the world, and then use that to try to propel the players towards the narrative or towards the world building. I find that helps the players focus, at least.
Yeah. It's, for me, it's just one of those things where, like, if a player hands me a backstory and I'm like, oh, this is really cool, like, I like the details about this, right? They don't really hand me a backstory. I always make a point of sitting down with a player and helping them work out their backstory, so they can tell me what they want, and I can help them fill in details about the world, and say we can come to kind of agreements about things, and and so by the end of it, we both essentially know that character's backstory. But to me, going into the first session and being like, okay, we're here, you guys arrive in town, and oh my god, it's that dwarf from Jim's backstory, and he's here, and that seems very pandery and forced.
Try doing that. Sometimes they'll love it. If you haven't, I've literally done that. In Crit Juice, where Crit Juice, luckily I had no problem with the players writing backstories. The guys were almost in a competition I never even asked for backstories. They were just sending reams of pages that they were writing about their characters. And one of our players, Daniel Acker, and his character Arion, had this whole thing in his backstory about one of his close friends from childhood, this dwarf known as Warrior James. And so just like when they walked into this one tavern one time, there was just a dwarf who turned around and went, Prince Arions! And, he was like, Warrior James? He's like, Prince Arions, it's you! Oh my God! And, and like giving him a big bear hug and just so happy to see him, and like, and then you kill off that character shortly thereafter, and then you've got it going. You just murder him in the most horrific way you can think of. That's the best part. You give your characters you make their dreams come true first. You give them all these interesting bits from their backstory, and then you start prying them apart and dismantling them and doing awful, horrible things to the world, and then it just feels awful. And then, hopefully, if they're still hanging around, you then let them be. This is my theory, anyway. Then when you give that long, dark moment of the soul where it's like, oh my God, everything we've loved is destroyed, and then you let them come in and be the heroes that they want to be and that they deserve to be, and battle off that evil and save those things that they love and bring it all together. And then they're standing in the world that they dreamt up and they created with the characters that they came up with and these things that they love, and they've saved them all. And that's the approach I tried to take with Crit Juice. With Crit Juice, I actually did almost no world building, which was really different for me. I started it in generic town with a generic king and princess and a story element to move it forward, and I had nothing else in that world planned. My only thought about the world was I want it to be savage. I want it to be hard for there to be like connections between human kingdoms. It's kind of like pockets of civilization in the wilderness. That was all I really had in
Points
my head.
of light for 4th edition.
Yeah, exactly. But like the
Everyone
balance-
hates that setting.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, except for the DM who can just be like an even bigger monster shows up and kicks your asses.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is that's all I started with, and then I just let the characters come to me with their ideas, or the players come to me with their character ideas. Like the first place we ended up going was Blazestone, which Tom Fonz's character Gub, the Dragonborn, sent me all this information. He's like, I'm from Blazestone, and this is like this, and this is like this, and it's this big volcanic region, and I was like, sweet, you guys are going there right now. Or I kind of led them up that way. But I had I wasn't going to include anything like that in the world, and then it became this really awesome place, and then I destroyed it, and then I was like, here it is, it's just like you described it. Dropped into a volcano. It's all destroyed now.
I'm absolutely with you on all that. I think my psychosis is, in order to get to that player stuff, I need to feel like they've lived in the world for a little bit, like that. Right. That's always important to me, is the first little bit of time has to be, what? Okay. So one of my favorite things that Pathfinder ever did was in their Adventure Pass, they published a campaign called Curse of the Crimson Throne. It's an amazing urban campaign. The problem is the initial hook that they give you is fantastic, but they give you this initial hook. The players go to this dungeon and kill this dude that was part of all their, is written into all their backstories. So they kill him, and then as soon as they walk out of the dungeon, the city has gone complete chaos and anarchy and destroyed. The problem with that is that there's literally no time to live in the city and learn and experience the setting before that happens. And essentially that's how I kind of view RPG like campaigns now, is there needs to be a little bit of that time for the players to kind of get used to how the world works, or turns around them and who is who, and find their footing, and then the big stuff rolls in, because Yeah,
you're totally right. You're 100% right. The world has to feel real. And it has to feel real. It has to feel like a place that people really live, that really matters and really exists, and that the characters' actions have repercussions. Because otherwise, then it's just like Playground Fantasyland, and they're just going to run around and not give a shit.
Yeah. But yeah,
totally
but again, my problem is I write campaigns that just go way too long, and like I'm not very good at like getting right to the meat of the the cool stuff right away. I kind of got to lead them by the nose for a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's the brutal plight of being a DM, right? Is the reams of stuff that you plan and write, which is so good that the players never get to.
Oh yeah.
They never, the secret door they never find, the NPC that gets killed or too soon or whatever, right? Like the many juicy leads that they're just not interested in, and all the stuff you never get to see. And something which always drives me crazy, because it's like, one, I've just tried to learn not to overplan, because I'll just plan plan all this, and just to trust that as a DM I'll be able to improvise great stuff on the spot, which is terrifying, but tends to work out.
That's where I am, is in the sense that I used to be a heavy prep DM. I used to prep a ton, and I just stopped because it's like I'm confident enough in my improv these days that I can just sort of I can use a bulleted list to get me through a session because I don't necessarily need like the dungeon map and every mini in it, and I don't need the long list of rumors and treasures and shops that they give it. Like I can get myself through that. It's what I usually do is I'll usually bullet out some major story points that I want to happen during the sessions. Like, okay, we start, they're in the town, they're gonna Jimmy Joe is gonna come and tell them that he saw the bandits outside. If they go outside and fight the bandits, the bandits are gonna run to their cave. Blah blah, blah, reinforcements, traps. This is okay. Big. Big epic fight on top of a pile of treasure at the end. That's it. Like, that's my notes for the set.
Thinking through, that's for me too. Same with notes. My notes nowadays are way more on motivations for things.
Yeah.
Like, why are people doing this for what reason? And that makes it feel real, as opposed to, and because all the prep you do on the names and all the kind of minutia is all the dressing that hangs upon like that skeleton of like they need to like be moved. Like you were saying, their motivations. When you attack them, they're going to go here because of X reason. And that, and then everything else can kind of flow from that and feel real.
That's actually one of the things I learned because I was never a homebrew DM, and one of the things I learned when doing Writhing Moon, which is the horror game, is when homebrewing a setting, for me, I realized it's so much easier and so much more, so much better for being an improv DM. When you don't necessarily need to prep what the NPCs are going to do, right? You need to know why they're doing what they're doing. Because when you know what they want and what they're, how they tend to... Like, so if you know that evil guy Jim wants this magic orb and he, you know who he's connected to and you know how he feels about this person and that person and this, then you can sort of... It doesn't matter what the players do because you know his motivations, you know how he's going to react to things. So if the players go to this guy Steve and and barter with you, like, how he's going to react to that, so you can set up a believable thing rather than saying like, oh shit, I don't know what he's going to do if the players go this way. I guess he goes there. Like you can sort of you can react more naturally and in a more complete way than I think you would be if you just prepped one path.
And nothing makes totally, you're 100% right. I agree with that entirely. And I love coming up with a monster encounter, some sort of combat encounter because a straightforward combat encounter where it's like these guys run at you and fight you till they're dead, it's fine, but like it's even more interesting when they have like they're trying to do something in this combat, and like when somebody like they're going through the combat and then some of the guys run off from the combat to go somewhere else and do something else.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden now the players are thinking. Now the characters are like, oh, wait a minute, are we doing the right thing? What are we doing?
I love setting up choices. Whenever players want to do something, I will almost always give them a choice to say, okay, you could do it this way and it'll probably be easier and more risky, or you could do it this way and it'll probably take longer, and that means obviously that like more time in combat you have to dedicate to this, or it'll be simpler, but you're gonna be out of commission for a while. Here's a secret, and don't tell anyone about this. I almost never use stat blocks anymore because I just create combats that I think have cool elements to them, rather than being like, what monster can I put in this fight? It's like, no, how can I make this fight feel interesting?
Fun,
right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Well, they say the rules are just there to be broken, and I think that's totally true with being a DM, right? Like that you're only doing the dice. The dice rules are only important so far as that they create excitement at the table. And if they're draining fun from the table, or if like a particular stat block with a monster's stats or whatever is draining the fun, then you need to retool it. But you're right. You have to keep it a secret if you're doing that. And I would never do that. Anyone who might be watching and listening to my game.
No, only full stat blocks, I promise.
I actually try and stick to that as much as possible. I really do. And I try and roll in the open as much as possible, because I feel like fudging, I used to do way more fudging, but I feel like it can become a crutch. And I feel like you'll just be like, this will be the encounter, and if it doesn't quite work out, I'll fudge it. And so I try and do it all in the open more. and stick to everything kind of as I have it written. It's probably stupid. I'll probably stop doing that at some point. But to just try and make myself come up with other ways to make the encounter interesting and dynamic and fun. But you're right. At the end of the day, sometimes it's this. There's the ultimate. This goes back to what we're talking about with like what motivates me as a DM and stuff like that. Like there's the awesome, totally great moment that when they're fighting the bad guy, where if he dies right now, this is going to be so great, you know. And sometimes he just needs to die right then.
Yeah.
And then that's great. And you know, even if maybe or however you got to work it to make it interesting. For me though, that's why I love playing and being a DM. When you get to those moments where it's like that's what really motivates me, is where it's like I feel like I haven't finished a session if we don't end on a moment of a really intense, kind of almost cathartic, emotional, something cool happening that people have struggled for and achieve in a real visceral way at the table, that people feel like they got something amazing happen to them. That's kind of what I go for.
Yeah, I think as a DM, kind of giving yourself the freedom to sort of dump in or out of a fight or an encounter or a trap or a puzzle or anything to try to give that and that's something I think a lot of DMs go through, is they ask me all the time, combat takes so long, and by the time the players beat the enemy, they're so tired and bored, and it's like, well, then what you should probably do is when you feel like the tension in the fight or either the puzzle or the trap or whatever is at its absolute peak, right? When they're about to make this like desperate swing that they really want to hit because it would be so cool, like that's a perfect moment to dump out of a fight, right? And they will never know, because they're not tracking HP, they don't know what the DC is, and letting them have those kind of heroic moments, especially at when you've built up to them for a while, is I think that's an important tool in the DM's tool bag.
Yeah, it's true. And the opposite sometimes also is great, when they hit a monster as hard as they possibly can and then it laughs it off.
And it does nothing. Yeah, no, that too is you're like, they're gonna smash this thing in two rounds. No, he has damage reduction now. He sticks around. I have a rule for fights: is every monster lasts just long enough to do something really cool, and then they can die. I don't care after that.
That's a great rule. In fact, I need to start using that rule more. I was just running a game the other day where I dropped a super great monster in, and it happened to roll last in the initiative order.
Yep.
And everyone ganged up on it.
They gang up on it. Yeah.
And on the one hand, I probably should have just been like, it does something great still. Yeah, you're right. It would have been cool. But I don't know. Sometimes the players just screw you. And that's the other thing I try and respect as a DM is when you're a player, you just love screwing the DM over. Nothing feels better than a player, I think. I mean, most of the time I'm a DM, but and I don't really feel this way when I'm a player, but when the DM's like, ha ha ha, here's my great plan, you guys. Yeah. And then you guys are like, nope.
I remember.
And you go, players love that, right?
So by the way, we're gonna take questions in just a couple seconds, but this is a really funny thing related to that. So my players they were about level 6, I think. They were in this cult dungeon that they had worked through this whole chapter of this story. That city was in plague. They finally figured out that the doctors helping out the city were actually cultists that were making it worse. They go down to the cult dungeon. They fight their way through it. They, the swashbuckler has a rapier battle over these pits of boiling plague juice. Like it's a really, really great dungeon, and they finally get to the end where the female cultist woman with her giant scythe is just sitting there waiting for them because she has nowhere to go, whatever. And they fight her and they kill her in front of her statue, and it's big and it's cool. And then, as they're looting the room, her body starts kind of cracking and breaking and turns into this giant flesh plague demon thing because that's the blessing of her goddess. And so this demon is floating through the air and doing all kinds of intimidating stuff, and the players are like, we don't know how to fight this. We're hitting it, but our swords are doing nothing because it has a little bit of damage reduction, whatever. The barbarian's like, I want to climb up the statue in the center of the room, and he's like, if I jump off this and I'm falling down at this thing, would you consider that a charging attack? And I was like, yeah, sure, I guess. Sure. And so he leapt off the thing. He rolled his attack, he hit a crit, he did 179 damage, and he one-shot that boss so hard.
Barbarians.
I'm like, well, I guess that's it. There's no cool fight here because you
Well,
just
what an epic
you
moment
just did
for
it.
Players, though.
Oh no,
What
no,
a-
absolutely. I didn't say that at the table. I'm not like, well, fuck it, fuck you guys. But you know, that's just it. It was just one of those things where like,
It's the pain of being a DM where you got to be like, yes, fine, you kill it, and the player's gonna go, yeah, and they'll talk about how awesome that barbarian was forever.
and they'll be
And
like, we totally fucked him out of that fight, and I'm like, you guys were. In my head, I'm like, as long as you won, I don't care.
That's a good story, man.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna dive into some question and answer stuff here. If you guys are joining us, first of all, if you're just joining us in chat, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, all of you, for your discussion before. I got into some real deep Edition War stuff. Just as long as you keep it
God,
civil.
of course.
My chat likes to go hard on each other about the edition stuff, but it's all right. If you guys are just joining us, you're watching Fuzzy Dice, the Dungeon Master Show, and I'm here hanging out with the man himself, David from Crit Juice. And we've been talking all kinds of shit about DMing and just having a good time. But we're gonna open up the floor to you guys. I just tweeted out about this, but also here in chat, Dicethulu will remind you that if you guys want to ask us a question, all you have to do is either tag at Exploding Dice or just put like question in in caps so I see it, and we will try our best to answer them, to discuss the topics that you guys want us to muse upon, and give you give you feedback on that. And we'll start with Richard McSunday, who says, we talked about this a little bit, but he says, my question will be how to create a mystery, like what, and a simple kind of structure to do that. Mystery. I'll. Do you want me to muse upon this? Because
Please start.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So the mysteries are an interesting thing because they require a lot of elements. The first element, and this works for both mystery games and horror games, is they require the players to buy in to what's going on around them. Because it's very easy for the players to, like, if you just start a normal D&D game and then decide this is going to be a heavy mystery game, and they're looking to just go in and smash monsters, they will absolutely not be following along. Like, they won't take the clues seriously, they won't, keep track of anything, whatever. So mysteries require players to remember details, or at least write them down, right? And, it's hard to have a winding sort of mystery without that. But the thing about I think the thing that a good mystery has is it has things that are just that tell just enough information to be unsatisfying when the players learn that bit of information, right? Like there always has to be that small chunk that is left out that they need to they need to figure out, and building that over sessions more and more can be tough, and it requires doling out information in very, very specific amounts. Sometimes it requires NPCs and stuff that are to be purposefully vague, even when the players are shouting, "Just tell me the answer!" Right? Like, but as long as you keep your players engaged, and as long as you keep them, every session giving them a new clue that they feel they need to figure out, then you will have them for hopefully as long as you need.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I would add that helped me in the mystery game I ran recently, the Star Noirs one, was so there was it was like a locked room mystery where they went into this room and they're like, how this person's dead.
Yeah.
And there was like one clue that I wanted them to pick up from that room, but I didn't know how they're going to be looking for, so I just came up with different ways.
We are breaking up kind of hardcore here. Hold on one second. Skype is being a bastard here. Are we cooling down, Skype? Are we all right? Are we all right, Skype? Is Skype all right? I think we're all right.
Okay, Skype, we okay?
Yeah, I think we broke up kind of hardcore there for a little bit, so I
Okay.
missed
All I
missed
was
a lot
saying
of that.
was, yeah. Assuming we're okay.
I think we are.
Uh,
I think we're fine.
okay. All I was saying was, I came up with when I had a mystery or a clue that I wanted to drop into a room. There was the thing that I wanted the clue to point out to.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually came up with like 3 or 4 different clues that all pointed in the same direction that the players could find, because I didn't know which way they were going to investigate. So, like, for example, I had like an unusual set of footprints outside of a window. I had a note that someone left in a book. They weren't all in the room at the same time, but I came up with like 4 different ways for them to find a clue. And then depending on what they were like, someone was like, I'm going to search the bookcase. Then I was like, okay, I can put the clue there and they can find it there. You know, if I'd only come up with, say, note in a book and no one decided to search the bookcase, then we kind of would have hit a dead end.
Yeah.
So and I didn't want to like railroad them into being like, something looks weird about that book. You know, so I just came up with like, if they didn't find that, then I would have had them find something outside the window, or I would have had them find something else. So I don't know. I thought that was helpful.
Yeah, you actually you reminded me about that. That is something that I learned a long time ago, and I totally forgot to mention it, but you hit it on the head. There was a blog that I read a long time ago called The Alexandrian, and he did a lot of good articles on role-playing and dungeon mastering and stuff. And he taught one of his articles taught me a thing called the 3 clue system, and it was exactly like what you said. The way he described it was, for every conclusion that you want your players to draw, you need to give them at least 3 clues that point to that conclusion.
Yes.
And that is exactly like what David said, which is, so okay. Let's say you have a town and you want the players to figure out eventually that everyone in the town is a cultist, right? You need to you can't just have one path that leads them there. You should say, okay, so maybe if they search the woods at the center, like the trees at the center of town, they will find strange carvings. Cool. Maybe if they go into the general store, they will notice some weird decorations hanging in the window. And maybe if they go into the library, they will notice a strange amount of books on this weird topics, like whatever. Those may not be great clues, but you sprinkle these, because you have to think about, okay, well, what if they don't get this thing that I put in front of them? What else is going to point them there? What if they look here? What if they look here? What if they look here?
If they do find the clues, I also find players love reinforcement.
Yeah.
Especially if someone else can make another search check or investigation check or whatever. If a different character does their own search and then they get a clue and it points in the same way, like, the players love to be able to like put their heads together and be like, guys, these clues match. So even if you come up with a couple different clues, feel free to drop them all in,
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to, but if they're still poking around, just like hand them out eventually.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that some DMs tend to do, is when the players have kind of got onto the trail and they've already made jump to the conclusion, the DM will kind of ease back on, like, okay, you don't need any more information because you've got it, you've made your thing. But like, if they keep looking, they should definitely they should find more stuff, make the mystery deeper, add another layer, just throw in, what's also really fun in mystery games, what I like to do is this sometimes when I can't come up with something great, is I will literally just throw out red herrings and then turn those into real things. Right? Like, because if you give the play, like, sometimes when the players search something that is not meant to be, because not everything should lead to the right conclusion. Some things should lead to the wrong conclusion. That's a big thing in mysteries all the time. But if the players go down the rabbit hole of a wrong conclusion, there's nothing wrong with like letting that spiral into something bigger. If you have creative ideas to fill that out, like, do it, because they're already they've become invested there. Like, maybe that'll be a cool story.
That's a great suggestion.
So yeah, hopefully that answers that. I mean, if you want us to kind of opine on anything else, within that, feel free to let us know. Shadzar says, do you make craft ales of your own design to serve your players in game?
No, I wish I did. That's a great idea. No, crafting ales takes too long for me. Someone will come out with someone's probably kickstarting an awesome in-home craft brewing system right now, and I'll buy it and I'll make craft ales. No, but what I do is I do a little mixology. I actually have some here. This is a prop from a game. The Crit Juice game will be running on Thursday. This is a flask. It's the iron flask that they have. Haha, a little bit of wordplay. I don't know if you guys know D&D lore. The iron flask is like an artifact that binds demons within it, or powerful spirits in this case. So I mixed up like a strange blend of like potent alcohols, and they can, or spirits, right? And when they need help in game, they can open this up and take a swig of the really gnarly stuff that I make, and it's extremely.
That's awesome, and then they can like commune with the spirits that are in the flask.
Yeah, I always try and put I have my Out of the Abyss.
Out of the Abyss, yeah.
I thought that was so cool here, which was I don't think anyone's figured it out yet because they're not familiar with that. But it's the drow symbol for demon or something, right?
Demogorgon or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I did that for this game back in our previous sessions in our 4th edition. I made up a alcohol called Bahamut's Breath that I also mixed up on my side, which was this intense, hyper potent, high alcohol drink that, again, same deal. They could take a swig of it, and if they did, it would let them like do maximum damage on their next hit or something like that. It basically gave them a crit, but they would have to down this shot. So I don't make craft brews, but I do make punishing alcoholic drinks that I create I really incentivize them to drink at the table.
That actually reminds me of, and I need to get this going because I haven't played it in too long. I used to run one-shots of my favorite game system in the world, which is Big Motherfucking Crab Truckers. And
I don't know.
No one does, and that's what makes it amazing. Big Motherfucking Crab Truckers is an improv system that has one rule, and that rule is you tell a story, you narrate the story until someone at the table stops believing you, and then they say no fucking way, and then you roll to see who's actually right. And that's it. And then
that sounds great.
It is amazing. It's one of my favorite games ever, and I need more opportunities to play it. But what I used to do it on one shots, and I was like, I wanted a way to make it more fun by including alcohol. And so normally the game is you roll 2 d8s, and you know the person who gets higher wins. But if you have a skill that's applicable to whatever the situation is, and you basically make up your skills. But if you have a skill, you get an extra d8. And I said, if you take a drink with your roll, you can get another d8. And so every time they had to roll, they were like fucking taking a shot. They're like, no, I need this extra die.
Yep. Incentivize drinking. It's a good way to, I guess, get your players drunk if you need help with that.
Lubricate the session, as it were. I love it. I also love the drinking the spirits thing. I don't know if I'm gonna, because I don't know if I can actually get a flask out to everyone to drink with, but that might actually be something that I steal for in-game purposes at some point.
I'm proud of it myself. Yeah, and then I painted it, and I painted my little demonic pentagram on it and everything. So yeah, I like this prop. This is an effective prop. That one worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely use it in game. I feel like it will have slightly less of an impact because the players aren't actually drinking out of the flask. But I don't know. Maybe one day. So remember, guys, if you're in chat, feel free to drop a question in just at Exploding Dice. I have quite a few questions that have come. People have sent me via Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that. So let's see if we can sort out one or two of these. Just real quick. Okay. This is something that I think you might be able to opine on. He says, I'm as a DM, I'm pretty informal and casual. My players are all relatively new. So I use kind of light comedy to keep their interest. But how do I add more serious elements to my storytelling without coming off as corny?
Ooh,
and that was courtesy of Weirdo YYY.
Nice question, Weirdo YYY. I would say Gosh, it is hard. You don't want to come across as maudlin, and it's hard to change tone really quickly from
Yeah.
silly to serious and try and keep people along. I don't know. I guess if I was me, I would try, and this goes back to what I was talking about before and trying to tie it into something that directly affect the characters. I mean, the most direct thing you can do, and this will be shocking, but it'll show them that you're not screwing around, is like put them up against something that's really dangerous, and then tear off a couple fingers from a player's hand or characters.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Not a
don't,
player's hand.
that'll set some kind of tone at the table.
Yeah, like do inflicting a brutal injury on a player, something permanent or semi-permanent, because it's obviously D&D and you can regrow fingers or whatever, but like, or even up to the extent of like severing somebody's arm. That's always brutal, and it avoids getting too. It's also, I think, when I'm trying to get serious, I have a tendency to get emo, and like kill off their wife or kill off someone, a close family member, or if they have something like that, or an NPC that they like, which is effective, but it's a little heavy-handed, I feel like. So I don't know. It's a really good question. What do you
Yeah.
think?
So comedy in like lighthearted sort of funny games are, I think, a choice that a lot of players make when they're not particularly comfortable really getting into character, really doing serious roleplay stuff. It not always, but it may sometimes be a comfort level thing. It may just be a preference thing. So those are things that I tend to talk about before we even sit down to the first session, right? Because I want to make sure that me and all of my players are on the same page going into any game, where it's like, okay, are you guys expecting, like, are you guys gonna give every NPC you ever meet a really stupid nickname, right? And just blow off everything they tell you, right? Or when an NPC has some, or when you're watching a moment go down or something like that, are we gonna be, is it gonna be a thing we can do? And so have that what I like to do, I mean, I give everyone the benefit of the doubt in the sense that I treat everyone I meet like an adult. So like if I have a group that's like that, they are all new and they kind of like the lighthearted fun, but I want to try some more serious stuff, I'd probably sit down with them and be like, hey guys, like, I kind of want to try some more serious stuff. Like,
That's good advice.
is it so, and having a conversation with people is probably the best way to resolve any of those problems, I think. And if the players will tell you, I'm not comfortable with that, or yeah, sure, that sounds really cool, then you go from there.
Try and I think that's great advice. Just talk with people at the table and tell them, hey guys, this session, I want to try and do something a little more serious. The players might really be into it. I think you'll also have to practice setting the tone as the GM, because the GM sets a lot of the tone at the table, and not like, like if the serious moment is coming up, you really kind of have to sell it as the DM, I think.
Yeah.
And so if you don't want it to be corny, you've got to believe it, I think, yourself, and sort of have to be like, the darkness, the silence, and you talk about how totally eerily quiet it is right now, and then like a dripping something, something to kind of set it up a little bit. I think the beginning of, if you haven't seen Stranger Things, the level of commitment that I don't know what the kids' names are, but at the very beginning of the first episode, they're playing that game of D&D together.
Yeah.
And the kid who's the DM has such an awesome level of commitment to the atmosphere that he's creating that I'm like, I got to be more like him.
Yeah.
I think just committing to the atmosphere you want will really help bring that seriousness to the front.
That actually, that also ironically is the exact same advice. The topic of beginners applies not just to sort of setting tone seriously, but also one of the things that goes with that is, as a DM and as a player, voice acting in general. So many players are uncomfortable getting into character, which is why as a DM, my rule is, like, from the first session, like, anytime you do an NPC, it's, you have to act it out. You have to, this is a rule for me, not my rule for my players, but it's like, it's gonna, I have to sell that character to them. I have to commit 100%, because what it'll do is, at least my hope is, over time, it will make the player more comfortable, getting out of their own comfort zone and kind of staying in there, and and fleshing out and expanding their role play horizons to try new things.
Totally.
Which will
You
hopefully
set the tone yourself. I totally agree. Like, and if I expect my players to speak in character or to take something seriously, like I totally bring an NPC in first, who just commit to speaking in character and try and commit to the tone, and start it that way.
Just commitment is huge. Like, people tell me all the time, I kind of like doing voices, but I'm really bad at them and I can't take it seriously. And it's like, yeah, well, we're all bad at them, right? Like, I'm not a professional voice actor. Like, no one. I mean, I do know some professional voice actors, but like, no DM I know really is a professional voice actor, save the ones who actually are. And yet, you still kind of do it and you still commit to it, because it's like, if you don't, then you're gonna get about halfway through a sentence and everyone you're gonna be like, okay, this is awkward, and then your players are taken out of it, right? And then you've broken their immersion for that moment. If even if you build it up just a little, like, that's more than you would have otherwise.
And you'll surprise yourself with your own voice acting and ability, and otherwise there'll be something you'll do and you'll be like, wow, I did that really well, and the players will be like, oh wow, you don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you never know what characters you'll be great at playing, or what ones you like. Here's the thing: is once I started voice acting, I didn't know it, but I realized that I have this wizard voice, this old wizard voice that I love doing so much that I try as often as possible to find an excuse to bring that character or a character like that into the game, because I love doing it. It's so much fun, and like, you will discover parts of the game that you enjoy, I think. This is actually this is really interesting. A question from Ekan606. He says, is there a basic formula that applies to describing scenes or settings? How do I make a typically bland room seem interesting? There's a second part, but that's a little bit more complicated. But
a couple suggestions on that.
Oh yeah.
One, I would say, don't put typically bland rooms in your game. Every room that's built think about the intention behind, like, who built this room and why is it there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no reason to put a bland room in your game. Every room was made for some reason and has some sort of history to it. So one, you can just kind of think about the history, or why is that room there, or what's going on. And there's going to be at least some interesting detail you can think up to make it stand out. And then two, when you're describing things, and I bet you have the exact same rule, you just do the 5 senses.
Yeah, basically.
Anytime the players walk in somewhere, think about, what does it sound like? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And what does it feel like?
Yeah.
Taste is always kind of weird to get to, but
yeah,
that's just ask yourself those 5 questions. As soon as you tell the players what it smells like and what they're hearing, like, they'll be there.
Yeah, that's and that's actually something that I learned a while back, and I try and put it into practice as much as I can. Is first of all, what I like to do is this is different from everyone. This works for me because I come from an art background. I'm a very visual thinker. So when I have a scene in my head, I just sort of, essentially what I do is I'm projecting an image of what that looks like in my head, and then I'm sort of like, in my head, I'm like panning a camera across and just sort of, very dramatically, like, the way I think about sessions and stuff is I like to think in terms of, like, movie cinematography. Like, I'm always essentially directing the film of the session in my head, and that includes, like, how you dramatically move the camera. And that sounds weird because it's like, there's no camera, but the way you describe things is essentially how you're moving the camera. So if you start on this side of the room, right? And you slowly, there's the window there, and it's draped with black curtains. And as you move over, you see a desk that's cluttered with, old books and, things that have just been left to collect dust. And as you finally pan around, like, now you see what's in the center of the room, and that's the big, thing.
The ruptured corpse of the old man.
Yeah.
His viscera flowing out through his rib cage. Like, yeah.
and
That's good.
you sort of direct the player's attention, their view, in their heads, and as you do it, like the more you describe, like everything you describe, like give it an adjective, give it something about it, something that makes it stand out. Give them something to latch onto, and the more I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you will get, and that'll just be kind of how you think of things. And like when they walk into a room, you'll just all of a sudden because connecting things, like he said, to sounds and smells and stuff, they're powerful emotions and powerful senses. So as soon as you tell the players, like, oh, you can smell the fresh baked spiced fish coming from the kitchen, they'll be like, oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah,
like
that I'm hungry already. That was
yeah.
a good description.
And they, now they're like, okay, now I'm in a tavern and I kind of want some of that fish.
Describe the crisp pine needle smell when they're walking through the forest outside. Like, just go for it. I also think I love using metaphor is something. If you can come up with an interesting or an unusual metaphor to help drive home a sense, is really helpful. Like, it doesn't just smell smoky. It smells like a piece of bread got stuck in the toaster and is just burning away. Something that helps ground people in a real sensation.
My problem with metaphors is I get really awkward with them, in the sense that, like, I'd be like, so sometimes, and I have this problem and I can't get away from it, is like I'll describe something, and then in my head I'll be like, no, they don't have a good enough sense in it. So I'll be like, in that movie where that thing happens, it's kind of like that. It's like I sometimes do that, and I have a problem. I have a problem with that.
No, I've done that too. I that can be an effective tool sometimes, or I'll be like late to describe something. I'll be like, it looks exactly like the pigs from Aliens.
Yeah,
the
it's like
tugger or whatever, and people are like, got it.
Yeah.
They're there.
Well, because those things, like, because when your players have those sort of, I would suggest not doing that when it's gonna break the atmosphere, right? But when your players understand the references, when your players understand the references and kind of it helps them pick out the details, that's absolutely a useful tool.
My general approach, going back to my first point of being, it's your world, you're creating it. Don't put a plain ordinary room in your world if you don't want to. Like, you start there. You're like, okay, there needs to be a room, starting point. And then just try and iterate it a couple times. Be like, okay, well, what's like an interesting feature I could put there? And you go, okay, that's a good second step. Now, what can I twist about that feature and how it affects the room? Just turn it over in your head a couple times, and then all of a sudden you have an interesting room.
I think that the simple way to think about it is like, no architect builds a building or builds a room or for no reason, right? Like no one just constructs something to sit empty. Like, everything is constructed with a purpose, and that means that the way it's built, the way it feels, just the atmosphere about it will serve that purpose. So if you say, if you're in a dungeon where the whole point is a waterfall moves these giant mechanics, the giant gears to operate some ancient machine, right? Then you can think about it like, okay, they're in this room. What would this room be for? Well, this room would probably be a channel room for the water. Well, that means that, okay, maybe there's a giant sluice above your head, with pillars coming down, and like you don't need to put things in it that shouldn't be there. You need to just think about, okay, if someone were constructing this room, what would its purpose be for, and what does that mean it would have in it? And then, okay, now I know. I know what this room is for. I know what it has in it. Everything else is just sort of set dressing. Like, I can fill it with tidbits if I want. But you already kind of have your, once you know why it's, because you don't put a blank room in a dungeon, right? You put a room that has a cool thing in it.
If you put a blank room, a plain ordinary room in the dungeon, you want to be the kind of DM where that's the most terrifying thing.
Oh yeah,
players
absolutely.
Where you walk into the room, what's in it? It's just a plain ordinary room.
Just nothing.
Blank.
It's just all right. It's whatever. It's calm.
We've never encountered that. What is this gonna be? Oh my god, the suspense.
Yeah, that's like, And that that's another thing. Like playing. You don't necessarily. So when it comes to descriptions, sometimes the things that you don't describe are just as important as the things that you do describe. Because if you're putting the players in a room, then it's entirely likely that a lot of the details of that room you want them to find out or to inspect on their own or to figure out, or like the revealing of those details is going to tell them what the room's purpose is for or how it got to be in the state it is, and that's going to give them a clue or a puzzle piece. And it's like, so if for example, if this is a room where they're going to fight scorpions that come out of the walls, right? You probably don't right away, as soon as they walk in, want to describe the giant burrow holes in the walls, because they're going to be like, okay, this is a fight room, we're walking right out. They'll just close the door, and they'll be like, you don't want to put the big evil thing right in the center of the room so they see it, and then they just close the door and leave. Like, you want
Right,
to...
or worse, they're like, okay, we got to barricade ourselves at the door.
Yeah, oh my God.
All poking around in the holes, someone else can start shooting arrows into the darkness. Yeah, you got to at least get them in the room.
So omitting certain details, because you want your, like, obviously you want your players to investigate and to learn things on their own and to feel like they're accomplishing. So you leave out the, like, if there's a dead body hidden in the room and they're not going to know about it until they find it, probably don't mention the decomposing smell. Like, just let it kind of come up naturally, or when they search for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's, again, that goes, that's right back to anything. As a DM, you're building the atmosphere, you're controlling where they look and how the tension builds. I think we have time for a few more. Let's take one or two really, really good questions, and we'll see. These are kind of rules questions, and I don't really want to get into those. Okay, this is interesting. Curly-haired schmuck says, he says, I'm playing 3.5. What is a good way to figure out what kind of treasure to give my players in a room? He says, I know there are tables, but I don't know how to decide, like, what they get and when.
Gosh, in 3.5, that's a really good question. I mean, because in 4th edition, they helped you break that down by, they kind of broke it into treasure packages.
Which I never liked. I'm you know what, my rule for treasure is it has to make sense, right? Like, I don't want you to, like, kill a thing and, like, oh, and there's a chest and you open the chest and there's a longsword inside, right? Like, it has to make sense. If to the place, to the fight, to the encounter. And I tend to be really stingy with magic items and loot and stuff like that. Like, I'll give players money, but I don't tend to give them big hunks of treasure and magic stuff, just because, I don't know, it never seems to fit. Like, it's different when the players kill, like, an NPC or an enemy. Like, they can have stuff that they're wearing, right? Like, that's usually when 90% of the stuff that my players get comes off of NPCs that they have killed,
They fought for it. Yeah, they earned that one. Especially if it's being used against them, and then they get arrested off the dead body.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, I saw him using this ring. I know what this does. Like, this is a cool ring. And, they don't have to be like, I found a gold ring. Maybe it does something cool. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I agree with that. You kind of got to go with the if it feels right rule. I mean, I think there are, if I remember in 3.5, there's a table for how much wealth each character should have per level. It's somewhere in the DMG, in the 3.5 DMG. It's like, here's how much gold you should have at level 1, level 2, level 3, or roughly how much wealth, anyway, counting your magic weapons. So use that as a guideline. Make sure people stay on track. I know DMs in general, I definitely do have a tendency to be stingy with magic items, but I think players love magic items so much. I try nowadays, I try to tend to be a little more generous than stingy, just because it also tends to be kind of more interesting and fun when you give people magic items. So, but yeah, you got to make it feel legitimately, like, earned, and it should make sense. I think if you want to give out
a cool magic item, totally giving it to an NPC, and then having that NPC use it against them, like their flaming sword or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fun. That's a great way to do it. But yeah, but the most mechanically conservative way to do it would be look at that table, see how much they should have per level, think roughly about how many encounters they're going to have before they get to the next level, and then portion it out in a way that makes sense. Whether that's like one big dragon sword at the end and you save it all up and they get everything at once, or that's like a series of NPC encounters or whatever. I guess that's how I do it.
Yeah, I think like some of my favorite moments are because players are going to they're gonna have those things that they want. Like if your player is a swashbuckler type, he uses a rapier, right? He's gonna be on the lookout for any time someone has a rapier that he can just take. And then once you get into a fight where like they're standing facing off the enemy and like he draws his rapier, that player's gonna be like, oh. Is it cool? And you're like, it's got black smoke, emanating from it. He's like, I need it. I want it. And then so that's I tend to like giving players things that way because it doesn't feel forced and it it allows them to kind of essentially suss out like you build up the tension to when they finally get for it because who knows, maybe that guy with the crazy cool rapier is gonna escape at the last minute, and then now it's just
Right.
out there in the wild. Like you never know how it's gonna go, but when it comes to like random treasure, I will usually make it more mundane stuff, stuff that I like art objects, I call them, stuff that if you read any module, they'll be like, you pick up a painting and a silverware set and a card figurine, and the players are like, I don't know what to, like, they'll hold on to that, like that's important stuff they're gonna use later on in the game, but to the the module, it's just
Right.
gold value. But I love when players hold on to that stuff forever, because then they're like 10 levels later, like, do we still have that weird statue we picked up, right? Like, can we do something with this? Can we trade it for something? Like, I love when players get creative with like completely stuff that is completely mundane and isn't even gonna it's not even gonna break the game in any weird way.
Yeah, that's fun too. Definitely fun.
Um,
Yeah, that's all I have to say actually.
Okay. Let's take one more really cool question and then we will call it the show because we are getting a little bit late here. Okay. So this is from where's the name there? Sloden. And he says I've DM'd for about a year during high school and I just started again. What are your suggestions for organizing your campaign content? How do you set up your notes and how do you plan your campaign arcs?
Gosh, it used to be that I just had binders full of info that like I stored and I had different tabs. But that was when I was more prep heavy.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest though, my organization was such a mess back then though, because I would start making notes, and then once you have a ton of notes, you just have to be really on top of it to keep it organized. And
Yeah.
During a game, I'd be like, oh, I've got to dig back through and find the note for this thing from before, and then things would get a mess. Nowadays, I have a super low tech system. I have a legal pad that I use that is dedicated to that particular campaign, and generally, we talked about this a little bit before. Like, I come up with a big world building story idea, so I've got a motivation, but I don't specifically plan out very many games ahead of time because the players are going to screw up whatever I have planned. So I leave plenty of room in front of me to maneuver to get whatever interesting outcome we're ultimately going to end at. So I usually am only planning maybe 2 games ahead, maybe just 1 game ahead, and I'll just have my legal pad. I'll be making my notes for that session. I'll usually do a couple pages of just notes, outlines for my sake, and then I'll be like, great, I think those are all my notes, and then I will go to a fresh set of pages, and then I'll bullet point it out really nicely with the most pertinent information for me called out. So I'll be like, monster, and here's an important characteristic that I need to drop, and here's an important hint. And then that's usually it. That's about it. I'll have like maybe just a couple pages of legal pad notes that I'll flip back and forth between. If there's important monster stats, I might write them down, I'll post it, and like stick them somewhere so I have those easy. That's about it.
I can actually show you sort of what my notes look like. I write them usually when I'm at work, because I do so much during the week that I don't have time to prep very much anymore. So usually at work, like this is what I wrote. You can't see, but this is like a bulleted, like it's not clear, but this is a bulleted list that I wrote about an NPC that the players are going to meet a little while ago, in a little while in one of my campaigns. And it's just, most of this is just backstory stuff. Like most of this is stuff that isn't going to actually affect the session itself. But it's just me working out the details myself. So when I get there, I know all of them. I'm familiar with all this. But when it comes to campaigns, and I can actually share this on Twitter later, I am a huge visual thinker, and so I developed this. I didn't develop it, but I started doing this thing where I basically plot my world out in a big sort of web flowchart kind of thing. You know, where I say, you know, I'll start with the main MacGuffin or the main sort of center of the campaign, and then I'll just kind of branch out like a line, like an arrow. Okay, this person, you know, betrayed this person, and this person wants to help this person, right? And you just kind of link it back together, and it becomes this sort of big web. And I reference it sometimes, but it's mostly, again, like I said before, it's mostly my way of sort of visualizing the whole world and who, you know, what factions are where and what factions connect to what. So at a glance, I can kind of figure out where I am in the world. And then you know, that's just me figuring things out. Like once I do that, I don't do much prose writing. I don't do much extensive note taking. I just sort of, you know, I'll sit at work thinking about a cool thing that might happen or a cool thing about an NPC or something. And I'll one thing I do when I'm planning my campaigns is, rather than writing, I monologue to myself a lot. I don't know if any other DMs do this. I know some people have told me they do, but so I'll just sit there and, like, for example, I was thinking I have a player who's going to have his backstory stuff coming up soon, and so I'm sitting there thinking, like, talking to myself, like, literally just voice acting what's going to happen when he meets this NPC in the future. And I'd be like, you don't even know what you are. You think you're, you know, you think you're a human, but you're not that. Yeah. And you do that in the shower, in the car, when no one's looking at work, in the bed, whatever. It's, you know, whenever you have free time, and like that, and just, okay, so sitting down and putting on a villain's voice and just monologuing, saying like you will never get, you know, wrest power from my hands. I have been working for eons, you know, to accomplish. You know, just what
intrude into my sanctum.
Yeah, and just do it, like, just for me, just starting on that path I will eventually find myself saying things that are just completely off the top of my head, completely improv, but they flow so well, and sometimes they create little story nuggets that I had never even thought of before, and I'm like, that's it, writing that down, like, I need to remember that for the session, and usually I'll actually forget it during the session, but I try and write it down anyway, and that's kind of how like, my planning is very scattershot these days, and you know, but it helps me improv a lot, and I think it's made me a lot stronger, because I don't rely so much on trying to get all this prep work done, you know?
Yeah, I think it helped me as a new DM to be very prep heavy, but I should have gone.
Yeah.
I should have stopped doing it sooner than I did, because it does end up taking a lot of time that you don't need to spend. This is like, here's a page of notes that I was just working on, like, you know.
Oh yeah.
Something for me, you know, where just like, but yeah, I guess before I get to my legal pad, I've got just an electronic document on my computer, just a Word doc that I like just brainstorm in, probably similar to your webbing out, where I just am like writing kind of thoughts, and then when I kind of hit on the story beats that I really like, whatever the fundamental concept that this adventure is about, and I'm like, ooh, that gets me excited, and then I'll brainstorm out like the entire session, kind of in terms of how I think the next 3 or 4 sessions are going to go, or however many sessions. I'll be like, okay, I think we're going to do about this much in this session 1, this much in session 2. And then that's very rough, and then I start getting to the details on the legal pad, and then it all changes as you go from side to side.
I think my rule when it comes to working on your campaign and working on your prep and all that is, and I say this a lot, prep as much as you need to feel comfortable, right? And at first that might be a lot, but and it might seem like you need to get a ton done, but I promise over time you will need to prep less and less because you will get more comfortable in your own abilities, right? At first I was not comfortable with my own ability to improv, to flesh out a thing on the fly, to kind of create, like, but it's like the fundamentals of anything. Like, once you know the structure of a good session, right, you can kind of work it on the fly. You don't need your notes to guide you there. You can be like, okay, I gotta insert a thing here to keep the energy up, or I need to bring it down, whatever. But as much as you need to feel comfortable and confident. And then my other thing as a DM, because as a DM and an artist and everything, I'm big on self-improvement. So it's always like, okay, if it took me 3 hours to prep, or if it took me 4 hours to prep my session, my goal next time should be, can I get the same prep done, or the same level of prep done in 2 hours, right? Can I cut down what I do, but get to the same place in half the time? And then can I cut that down even further? Because the more I can cut down off my actual writing and prep and note stuff, the more time I have to spend on other things, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great advice.
And hopefully those are some solid answers to the questions, and will help you go on to be a more confident and DM, and find the style that works best for you. And then don't worry about becoming an improv guy, or I only need 5 notes on a piece of paper to run a session. Like, you will get there eventually, but don't worry about it, right? It doesn't matter. It's not, there's no rush. You just enjoy what you're doing and have fun with it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's you and your friends sitting around a table having fun is what it's about. So just, whatever you need to do to have fun.
Absolutely.
I think, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's the goal. I mean, that's where we're all trying to get. And if it's not like, if you're not having fun prepping, then just, you're not going to have, it's no longer, why are you doing it?
Right. That's true. That's really true. Yeah. That's actually when I stopped prepping as much, is when I was like, Jesus,
this is not fun.
I'm not having fun right now. I wish I was done. And then you come to the game, and then I don't use most of my prep, and it was dragging down the enjoyment of the game for me.
Yeah, basically.
Like, okay, well, I'll just prep less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me it was out of a necessity, because my schedule just got too full to sit down and do the writing. But it was a very liberating thing, and I really enjoy the way that it's opened me up. Like, I like being able to just sort of sit down, the day before a session, be like, okay, what do I need to accomplish? What do I need to make sure I hit? I got this. I get this. What's a cool scene? Okay, cool. We're ready to go.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the last question we're going to take. It's getting a little bit late here, but of course, thank you guys for all of your questions. Thank you for sending those in, both on Twitch, Twitter, and Reddit. Of course, if you guys did not get your question answered, we do the show every week, so there's plenty of time. And of course, you can just hit me up on Twitter whenever you want, and and I'll try and answer them. But thank you guys. We're gonna kind of wrap things up in I guess here right now. Sorry, my music is getting really loud. I'm gonna turn that down a little bit. But a big thank you to everyone for hanging out, and of course a big thanks to David for joining us. I certainly hope you guys had a good time. We are of course not done here. We're gonna be wrapping up. We're gonna be doing some last minute announcements, and then of course we're gonna be passing on the love with a host. Give some other D&D channel or someone out there, the spotlight for a little bit. But before we do that, David, man, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being here. Do you want to real quick tell everyone a little bit about you? Hooks and plugs, where they can find you on the internet, and what you get up to?
Sure, guys. Yeah. Well, if you want to watch me DM any games, you guys can tune into the Saving Throw channel on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Saving Throw Show. I do a game there every Thursday night. That's including this Thursday. This Thursday, I'm playing Crit Juice, which I talked about a lot. It's a great game. Some incredibly talented professional improvisers out here in Los Angeles who I play with, and they get absolutely sloshed. You can donate to influence the outcome of the game and all that. So I'm the DM for that. And then every other Friday, that's the first Friday of the month we do that. Thursday. first Thursday of the month. Tune in for Crit Juice. Every other Thursday, I'm on the same channel, same time, 8 p.m., playing Star Wars RPG by Fantasy Flight Games. It's called Never Tell Me the Odds. It's really, really fun. It probably has my favorite dice system out of any RPG I've ever played. It's so great. Tune into that, and we get up to crazy antics there as well. It's a lot of fun. You can follow that on Twitter. I'm at CritJuice, CritJuice, Crit Juice. That's because of the booze we drink. Or the Star Wars Twitter handle is at NTMTO Podcast. Never Tell Me the Odds Podcast. That one's ridiculous. Maybe don't try so hard to find that one. Find it if you can. The only people who follow me on that are like the true believers, the true fans who have managed to like type in all 13 of those letters and find me.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people say some pretty positive things about that.
It's a fun show. All the shows are great. I have such wonderful players. I'm so lucky to play with out here, so I have a great time. But yeah, you guys can tune in. That's 8 p.m. Pacific time every Thursday, and I would love to see some of you guys there. I had a ton of fun tonight. This was really great. I'm so glad you invited me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for stopping by. As always, guys, my name is Askren. I am your host and Dungeon Master here on Exploding Dice, where this is not the only thing we do. In fact, we have live D&D, not just D&D, but live role-playing, right now 2 times, coming up on 3 times as we get a new show rolling a week. We also have this talk show here every Tuesday. Wednesday is Iron Gods, a D&D 5th edition sci-fi fantasy campaign, and of course, Saturday is Writhing Moon, an open legend horror campaign, which is just so much fun. And if you like blood and gore and mystery, then that is for you. Then, of course, we have Mondays where I do creative streaming. I didn't have a stream this Monday, but next Monday I'm actually not going to be doing creative on my channel. I am actually going to be joining AP Gaming Real. He has a show where he and another person basically do some one-on-one role-playing in the Burning Wheels system, and they have an artist sit around and illustrate scenes and stuff from the session as it happens live, and they are loosening the term artist to let me come hang out for that. So I will be there. You will not see my face, but you will see my Photoshop screen as I doodle whatever is going to happen. I don't even know who's going to be playing. I know nothing about it. What's up?
That sounds great. That sounds really awesome.
You know what? When he pitched it to me, I was like, okay, that sounds kind of weird, but you know what? Why not? Sure, whatever. Let's try it. And so they've had a couple episodes. I managed to catch one. It was all right. It was cool. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to draw up to their standard, but who the hell even knows?
Give it a shot.
Yeah, why not? I'm very slow when I draw, so I won't be able to keep up. And then what else do we have? This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday. Yeah, that's our streaming week right now. We're getting more content rolling, though. We have a couple shows in the works. Of course, if you guys are just joining us and you have not already, our big Exploding Dice monthly giveaway for May is almost ending, so get in on there and you can win a whole bunch of Dwarven Forge stuff. And some Reaper minis and some other goodness. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and of course, keep your eyes on Twitter for the big charity event that is coming up. We're going to be working hard on that to make it a great event. That's really all we've got. We are of course going to pass the love along with a raid on someone, and I don't know who that's going to be. You know what? My dude is playing on this channel right here, so why don't we go say hi to him? Actually, you know what? We're gonna go head over to Firecrow's channel where they are playing Natural Ones. There's Firecrow, and of course, his name just slipped my head. Wax Steven is the DM, and he's a friend of the show in the past. So we're gonna raid them. Here's what's gonna happen. It's !raid Firecrow. Yes, Dog is playing on another channel too. But here's the deal: we're gonna go host them. I want you guys to pop in chat, tell them where you are coming from with the Exploding Dice raid, and just show them lots of love as they're playing some D&D. We, of course. That's it for us. We will see you next time. A big thank you to David for hanging out, and a thank you to all you guys. But as always, as we leave, just remember, don't let Dice Thulu get his tentacles on you, because he gets mighty handsy when he does. We'll see you next time, everyone. Take care, guys. Bye.